my name is Marina, and I am a senior at Virginia Commonwealth University, and I had the opportunity to study in Russia this past summer. So I'm just kind of sharing a little bit about my experience, the university I studied at, and how I managed to do research on top of my studies at this university at the time. So we'll just jump right in. So I'm gonna go through how I picked my university, just sort of the process and how I wove in the research and basically how I conducted my research and everything up until the point that's the day I got home. So I studied in Moscow this past summer for 3 weeks, and it just so happened to be during the World Cup as well. So that really added to the excitement and just all of the fun opportunities that were with so many other foreigners coming in. I believe Russia had a new record of the number of Latin, South American foreigners that had come to the country in the history of the country, which was really impressive. So I studied at MGIM, Moskovsky Государственный институт международных отношений. It's aka the Moscow State Institute of Foreign Affairs. And just a little history about the school. It was founded in 1944 by the Soviet government. It was originally in conjunction with Moscow State University, but in the 70s it had been granted its own university status. And it is overseen by the Department of Foreign Affairs, so it is tied in with the government. But a lot of diplomats, a lot of big bankers and businessmen have gone through this university. It's incredibly prestigious, so I was super excited when I found out that I had been accepted to the summer program. And there are 2 campuses. The main campus is in the academic district of the city center in Moscow, and that's the picture right up there. But the summer program I participated in was at the Dinsovo campus, and the next slide will be a map. It holds the Guinness. It holds the Guinness World Record for the most taught languages out of any university in the world. Can anyone guess the number? Wild guess. How many? Throw out a number.
100?
53.
53. Okay.
Close. I actually found this program over my winter break. I was looking at all sorts of programs all over the world. I minor in Russian. I knew that I wanted to go to a school that was in Russia, or like a former Soviet country. And Moscow was like the ideal location, of course, and I wound up going like deep into the web and finding their website and just started the process. But so here's a map pretty much of where I was. That city center, the dot right in the center is the Kremlin. And I was here in Dinsovo, it was 30 minutes by car, 40 minutes by train to Belaruskaya Vokzal, which is right in downtown. It was awesome. My classmates and I would just hop on the train and go watch games in the city or go to museums, different excursions. But before I got to Moscow, I had to go through a planning process with the help of my professor and Dr. Murphy-Judy. I had a preliminary idea of what I wanted to get into. I knew that I wanted to do something with global finance. And I just kind of snowballed with these ideas where I landed at the point of researching the transition from communism to capitalism and just how the culture exists today in the midst of this transition. A lot of people don't realize it's an ongoing transition. They are trying to catch up with trade and just being involved in the global market with all the political issues as well. So I started adding everything that I was reading about or even thinking about into a research portfolio. And that portfolio consisted of scribbled notes, images online, other documentaries for inspiration. I started building a contact base with the help of my professor as well. And because I did have some extended family in Russia, I used my connections to my advantage, and it helped kind of build upon the research that I was doing. And I don't think students are encouraged enough to do this because that gets you into areas that most people wouldn't have access to because you have these connections. So that's what I'm asking about connections. I applied for the UROP grant, which is the undergraduate research
Opportunity program.
Opportunity program. I should know that.
That's okay.
So that allowed me to kind of branch out a little further. Finance is always difficult. What I had trouble with is realizing that this is a multifaceted process. It's not linear and chronological. All of these things are happening at once as far as planning. So it's a matter of just being organized and throwing in information and ideas, which led me to the next point of pursuing an unconventional method, and that is doing my research in the format of a documentary film. I didn't want to write a paper because I'm writing a paper every other week for my other classes, and I think having visuals about what's really going on in the East is vital to like the West's understanding of the lifestyle, the culture, the language. So how did I do this without any film experience? I had to be goal-oriented and flexible, and I had to go reach out to film students and kind of create this whirlwind of a schedule to learn more about how to capture everything with a DSLR camera and miniature shotgun microphone. And as I got closer to my departure date, I was just double checking everything with the university that I was going to be studying at, and I was just creating like tentative timeline of what I'd be doing in Russia. So to the next. So this is this was in the proposal that we had submitted for my UROP grant, and as you can see, it's very detailed. I have dates of specific things I would be doing. A lot of these excursions in June and July were with the school. They did an excellent job of showing us around Moscow and a lot of places that many tourists don't see but are really significant landmarks in Russia. So I have to brag about the program a bit. It was stellar program, and it's kind of surprising that they don't have a relationship with study abroad agencies because I didn't find it as an independent program, but I highly recommend it nonetheless. So I get to next.
Yes.
So June 18th arrives, and I'm off to Sheremetyevo, the airport in Moscow. So I had to say I only have good things to say about Sheremetyevo. I started in Dulles, and landing in their international airport was just astounding. The infrastructure was just amazing. Customs was a breeze, no problems whatsoever. So there's a lot of misconceptions that, oh, they give Westerners a hard time. Not true at all. Money exchange and SIM card was absolutely easy. I looked up the pricing to see if Yandex Taxi, which is like Russia's Uber, was still cheap, and it was $15 to get an hour closer into Moscow. So then I was off to MD. And this is us in our classes. I did not realize this before going in. All of my classmates were professionals in whatever career field that they worked in. There were other students there from American University, but it was kind of like this mesh program where professionals intersected with students, and we all took foreign policy classes. So this gentleman right here, his name is Ole, and he is from Norway, and he was representing the Norwegian government there by learning more about Russian foreign policy so they can work on a fishing bill. This is terrible. Between the Baltic Sea, the Baltic Sea. And the lectures were amazing. I threw in Russian spies because we actually had a lecturer who was a former agent for the Russian government that had been caught in the United States. And I was absolutely shocked to find out that he had worked and had been indicted by the FBI, and he was sitting there lecturing us. Before I knew that, though, he sounded like the most intelligent, articulate man to ever lecture a class that I've ever taken. So I was just incredibly impressed with all of the lecturers, all of their experiences, and things like that. And of course, there was amazing networking with all of the professors in my classes. We went on the best excursions ever. This was actually, is everyone familiar with solid Seven Sisters buildings? they were like architectural. There's 7 of them. They're all identical, spread out through Moscow. One is a Hotel Ukraine, I want to say, and they have a riverboat cruise on the Moscow River that will take you right by the 2 major cathedrals in the city. And at one point, we circled around the stadium where the World Cup game was. So it was just amazing. But kind of doing research while in these areas, it was not difficult whatsoever. I chatted with taxi drivers and got amazing interviews from them. It was as simple as just asking, hey, can you answer a few questions for me? And I remember one night, it was just the nicest thing. A taxi driver complimented my language abilities because so many foreigners there did not have a Russian background or know Russian as a second language. So Russians, I noticed, were incredibly flattered that anyone could move even a little bit and tried practicing and like speaking locals. They were just very impressed and really appreciated it. So that was when I spoke my broken Russian. So those are my brave moments. Don't be afraid to make my mistakes. So we went and toured the Duma, and this is the vice chairman of the Communist Party in Russia. And his office was right behind him. Unfortunately, he wasn't in, but we got incredible access to places in Moscow, and we toured RT News. And here, this woman in white in the corner, she'll come up in a little bit. But we sat down in meetings with journalists. We watched how they brainstormed and put together news, which is really incredible. There's a lot said about RT, how it's run, how it's propaganda, and things like that. But sitting and meeting the journalists, they're all simple people. They go to work trying to, well, they have late nights, but they're just normal journalists. So that's what I have to say about RT.
Sorry about that. Slide forward. Did I go too?
Oh, I don't think my videos can play. That's okay. So these were just like kind of panorama videos of Red Square, the Moscow River, and it was just astounding. I threw in the Moscow River one because I was on a bridge where I have a picture as a child, and just kind of like painting around it there, like as an adult now. It was really, really cool. We went to the Kremlin. Inside the Kremlin, we saw Putin's office from the outside, of course. The officers and guards standing and guarding the Kremlin. That was awesome. And I should have made sure that you had access to these, but this was an interview I conducted with Anna Belikova. She was the RT journalist I pointed out earlier. She speaks 8 languages, and she has traveled all over the East, dipping into Southeast Asia, Northern Africa, for her correspondence job. And she was just an amazing and impressive and intelligent woman and really helped me out with my research. And it all started with me just asking, can I ask you a few questions? A few days later, I spent a whole day with her walking around Moscow. She showed me amazing cathedrals and connected me further to other people that I could interview. And that's kind of like the whole going with the flow. There were a lot of unpredictable things that I just had to roll with, I guess. But this was a monastery, and it's just such an incredible and beautiful cathedral that they built. But concluding the trip, or like finishing up, we went and did paintball in the Moscow suburbs. It was awesome. The professors joined us, which was really cool. We had pizza in like this massive park in Solo, and we finished that week with this excursion. And I wish I added more pictures, but it was just such a beautiful cathedral. I don't have words to describe it. So getting back to the States, there was a lot to unpack from my experience because after my 3 weeks in Moscow, I spent 6 weeks in an underdeveloped part of Russia. So I saw 2 sides of what's going on in Russia, really. So I started putting together my footage, I started going through the pictures, and I hit a brick wall and kind of had a sense of failure. I felt like I didn't capture the true story of what's going on in Russia because of kind of the bumps in the road I hit in the Caucasus. But then there's the other side of like Moscow just being an amazing and brilliant city, and I didn't know how to put all of this together, and it's still an ongoing process right now. So success or failure, I would say both in terms of my research, but it's a learning process as a student, and I'm fine with that. But as far as staying in touch with the experience, I keep in touch with my former classmates all the time. I email the professors occasionally to see what classes they're teaching now, how the weather is at home, when snow is coming, and I'm continuing my research even after my trip. So that was my time in Moscow, and it was phenomenal.
Thank you so much. Okay, Madeleine,
What?
you're on.
All right.
If you want, I can either share this with you and you can move it forward, or you can tell me when you want me to move your slides forward.
I'll just tell you, that's probably easier at this point. All right, so hello everyone, my name is Madeline Murphy. I am a senior at VCU, and majoring in French and political science. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my ongoing project in French linguistics. So if you go to the next slide, please. So the title or the focus of my project is Intersections of Language, Identity, and Politics in Regional French Dialects. And the goal is to sort of find out how does speaking an endangered dialect, specifically French ones, influence one's self-conception, cultural identity, nationalism, particularly in light of the fact that France has such a history of discriminating against anything that isn't French. So if you go to the next slide, please. So Dr. Murphy-Judy and I designed this project around things that I am interested in. Obviously, the goal is to sort of show other French students or other students in general that, you know, language can be used to further their involvement in other fields. And so at first we decided to do this project, and then we decided to figure out how it would best work into the VCU World Language Curations and Modules project. So that is a larger project with lots of different people working on it, but basically the goal is to create new curriculum to show students different ways to learn French besides just the traditional textbook. So after coming up with this project, if you could go back to the...
I certainly can, sorry.
You're fine. So to formulate we started to formulate how to best go about this project, and decided that going to France and doing interviews with people who speak various dialects was the best way to go. And that once I would come back, I would work on turning these into material for the modules project. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. So for the locations, we chose Strasbourg, Aix-en-Provence, and Nantes. And these three were chosen because of their location in linguistically diverse areas of France. If you go to the next slide, you can see how far away these are all from each other. So in Strasbourg, I was researching Alsacien. In Aix-en-Provence, I was researching Provençal, and in Nantes, Breton. Of course, this is still ongoing. This was our initial plan. And if you go to the next slide, please. So I'm really jumping into the experience, but so obviously this is ongoing, so I can't have quite the same distance that Marina can, looking back on hers. But what I found really amazing, obviously, is not just learning through what I set out to do, but just learning every second of every day through just participating in the culture. I mean, I was here during when France won the World Cup, so that was, as you might imagine, an interesting experience also for Bastille Day. And experiencing the different cultures in various parts of France has been really interesting as well, the differences between various regions. It's also included a lot of difficult conversations, you know, in English and in French, especially difficult in French, not necessarily knowing, having all the vocabulary to fully articulate yourself, but as you might imagine, when someone finds out that you're an American, they want to talk politics. So that has led to quite a lot of interesting conversations that have been really eye-opening and helpful for me to think about my own views and my own political stances. And my hope is that talking to someone else, they might have the same experience where they maybe get some distance on what they've been taught to think. And this has also been definitely a lesson of flexibility. Things have been pushed back a lot for various reasons. Even, for example, one interview I was supposed to do had to be put off to a later date because the family are farmers and had to harvest on that day. So there's definitely been a lot of unexpected delays, but that's been, I think, definitely good for me as a just a side lesson. And if you'll go to the next slide, please. And so in terms of goals for this project and for sharing the wealth, so obviously the end goal is to incorporate my findings and my research into the Curations and Modules project with the rest of the team. And I hope through showing other students my experience, I can highlight mainly the applicability of language learning. So I know that in the US, obviously, the most obviously useful language is Spanish because of our proximity to Mexico, but I want people to realize that there are reasons and uses to learn other languages besides just the obvious one, Spanish. And also the intersections with French and other fields. That's, I think, what I love the most about this experience is that it's combining two things that I'm so interested in. The fact that languages can be used to open doors in other fields. So in conjunction with whatever else a student is interested in. And in addition, hopefully to highlight the use of peer learning. I'm a huge believer in the efficacy of peer learning. And finally, also, as I said before about political conversations, difficult conversations, sort of micro-diplomacy, showing people in other countries how Americans can be not on the news, not what they hear from various politicians, but just a normal person coming over here. I know that I've learned a lot about French culture just from talking to people in the grocery store or in the park, and I hope that they may have had a similar experience to me in that, in learning about the culture that way. And if you'll go to the next slide, please. And so what is next is, obviously I'm not finished yet, so I'm going to keep interviewing people, keep gathering data, obviously make the most of my time abroad. I'll be here till December, so there's still quite a ways to go. And finally, bringing my experience back to VCU, and I hope to encourage other students to maybe do the same or look into other options that they can create based on language learning. And that concludes my part of the presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And she is speaking to us from France right now. So it's kind of late there for you. What time is it?
It's 11:25. Yes, it is.
Right, yeah, I hope you don't have to get up early tomorrow morning.
No.
I wanted to quickly commend both Marina and Madeleine because they both are recipients of prestigious research awards. And Madeleine was able to get one of the Baldacci Awards, which is something that just started at VCU. She's one of the first recipients. I think there were maybe 5 people who got them, and she was one of the first 5 to get these. And of course, Marina got something at the UROP Awards, which are really prestigious as well. And so we're just really proud of both of you for having done that, but then also having the chutzpah to go out and do what it is that you're doing. Have you got any questions that you'd like to ask?
I mean, I guess one of my questions would be just how to apply study abroad programs for students who are in high school looking towards that in college. So for them, if they are juniors or seniors looking 4 years ahead next thing, like a long time off, that have prepared in advance. I would think obviously you would want them to start thinking about this, knowing where if you're wanting to study one language, you want to start college going into this lot, and if you're doing that, eventually you probably are going to at least study abroad, not live abroad for a period of time.
Well, I have typically heard about students needing to study abroad as during their 3rd year in school, because that gives you time to like better your language skills, get settled in your institution. You don't want to leave too early. By that time, it really comes down to like social things as well. You've got your friend group back down, and you feel more comfortable leaving. So, as far as planning, speaking with advisors their freshman or sophomore year about having one semester or even the summer or even winter, there's so many different programs where they kind of put it in their timeline and start looking for programs, and their advisors can help them do that.
Do you have any ideas, Madeline?
I cannot hear the question. I'm sorry.
Can you hear your question? Can you? I'm sorry to ask you to come up closer, but
My question was just about how to prepare high school students for this experience in the future, how to encourage them and promote it, because right now they may not be thinking about those options, but how to get them thinking about it before they go off to college.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. I think, again, I think just driving home the fact that study abroad is not just for, people majoring in a language or international relations. They're like, it can really be, it's useful to anyone at all. And there's things that you learn abroad that you can't possibly learn in a classroom in the US. So I could say 1,000 great things about study abroad. I think also telling or informing people about all the scholarship opportunities that are available, because I know in my case, when Dr. Murphy-Judy told me about the Baldacci scholarship, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, I'll try for that. But I never, like in a million years, thought that I was going to get it. And I think that's sort of how everyone feels, like, oh, well, I'm not going to get that scholarship. But I think there are so many options available to help with the financial part, which I think is, obviously a huge issue, is just getting that plane ticket. Yeah, I think that's what I would say.
well, and I would add something. Regardless of what university is in your area, I would suggest that you contact that university and say, can I bring a group of students? Or do you have somebody who can come to my school and talk to my students? Because it's really important for high school kids, first of all, to recognize they can go to college. And we've got a lot of young people now who think they can't even go to college. But if somebody comes and says, hey, look, I come from the same kind of background you do. I'm at college, it can happen. And not only can it happen, but you can study abroad. We have a young man in Spanish and French. He was taking both, who was from a first generation family of immigrants. And he went to France, and he went to South America, and he went to China. And he studied abroad in all 3. He had never even conceptualized walking outside of Richmond, because his family but then suddenly it opened to him. we would love to bring that kind of thinking to your students and to say, yeah, you can. Don't just dream big, but do big. Where are you located?
I'm from Abington, Virginia. It's right on the Tennessee-Virginia line.
And there in particular, because Abington, some of the kids, that's that part of Virginia where they may be thinking that's not going to ever happen. We have students from Abington who have done amazing things. So, and we're doing this by Zoom from France. We can Zoom with you. I mean, there's no reason that your location has to prevent you and your students from having this kind of access and to thinking big.
Also, I'll just add that I'm from Southwest Virginia, so if you want anyone to come by, I can definitely do that.
There you go.
We're in Southwest Virginia.
Not too far from Blacksburg.
Okay. Yeah, it's about 2 hours away, so very close.
Yeah.
I can think of another student who's from Floyd. Isn't that sort of down a little bit?
Probably close, I'm not sure.
So, I mean, yeah, we have a lot of students who want to come to Richmond from your area.
Yeah, I
They
mean, I
do.
know students well.
And of course, it's not just VCU. You've got Washington and Lee. And Washington and Lee, if you talk to Dick Cutner, they're doing amazing things, making sure that every student can study abroad and funding it for those students.
And I think that that's the key for the majority of them, at least in the area that I'm from. They might think about the possibility of traveling, but funds and how to do so may hold them back.
There just about information because there are scholarships available and opportunities here, and actually sometimes they don't really weigh the funds because people do not apply. As you said, students or as Madeline said, Dr. Murphy-Judy told me to apply, but I was not thinking about getting the Baldacci scholarship. So the role of the professor also, the teacher, telling them, there is this opportunity and there are these scholarships, and sometimes the scholarships are not even related to the university. The same program sometimes that you would like to apply and to go, they have scholarships available, then sometimes the rent is paid or the tuition is paid, which is something that the students and teachers can look more into the information. And nowadays in Europe, and I can say Europe because that's the area that I know the best, sometimes the tuition is a third of a college tuition in accredited programs. So sometimes when there are students, you are going abroad and you're taking these credits, but you're paying a third of what you pay here at VCU. So if you think about it, with the extra money of the tuition, they can live abroad. So with the same amount of money that they would take courses at VCU during the summer, they have an experience abroad for 2 months. So, and now there are always more possibilities because they are really trying to make students accepting more international students and making the accreditation system easier so students can go there and they can transfer easily on. So,
And those were
and
able to
just
transfer
it's about
back.
information.
Well, I mean, I have that same experience as well, so I understand that it's theirs. And maybe I think explain to them as a whole nother, especially from, I can say it, but I think sometimes hearing it from outside that.
I think if they see Marina and they see Madeline, who are closer to their age, and they say it, it has much more of a reality quotient than if some old fogey says, yeah, of course you can study abroad. But somebody who says, yeah, I just did it last year.
Yeah, I
And
think that makes it a whole lot different. Because even though I'm not, I'm 50 years old, the oldest I have, that still sometimes turns me away.
I wanted to mention too that the Virginia Community College system has been working really hard at trying to provide opportunities for study abroad for students who go to community colleges. Don't hesitate to contact the community colleges in your area.
That's the majority of our students.
And that's where they're going to start. We're trying to work now so that community college or students who have finished their 4 years in high school, if they've done the 4 years of language in a high school, they come to a community college, well, they've already done all of the courses that the community college has. So we're working really hard now for students at a community college to be able to take third and fourth year courses at the four-year institutions for the same price. So it's, you know, it's something that we're working on right now. We might be able to work it out already on, you know, a little bit, not quite administratively across all of Virginia, but it's worth starting to ask about. And I know now that Washington and Lee, for example, even though I think it's $65,000 a year, they're accepting all community college credits as full-blown credits at their university. It is probably even more likely for a well-heeled private institution to be able to think these things through to afford that for your students. So I'd hit them up. The worst you can get is no. Well, I think we've actually gone beyond our time, and thank you so much. All right, Madeline, thank you.
Thank you.
I have recorded all of this. If I can just figure out how to stop the recording now. And I can share that with you. It's something that you can use as evidence of the work that you've done. I'm hoping like holy heck.
Sure.
I can get this. Oh, there it goes. All righty. So I'm